Alright class, this is just a quick recap of what we did on Tuesday. On Tuesday we started a little bit of work on distance and midpoint formulas. Starting off with the distance here, I'm going to just talk through this one. I'll do example 1, or number 1, then we'll turn the page over, talk through the midpoint, and do number 1 as well. Our distance formula written here, it's hard to see, I'll write it again, is d equals the square root, the distance equals the square root of the quantity x2 minus x1 squared plus the quantity y2 minus y1 squared. What it's saying visually for us is it's super related to our Pythagorean theorem. It's saying if we have 2 points, A and B, consider them -1, -2, and -1, -3, and 5, it's asking us to find the distance between those 2 points. Find the distance between 2 points A and B. And with those 2 coordinates, we would just plug those numbers in. We sort of see them doing it here. They're doing the second x value minus the first x value. They're doing 3 minus -1, and they're doing squaring that, and then they're doing 5 minus -3 and squaring it. And you can just work out the formula there. I think it's perfectly fine to do that. This formula would be on your EOC at the end of the year. It would be on your reference sheet for the EOC at the end of the year. I just want you to understand sort of how this formula relates to our Pythagorean theorem. If we've got these 2 coordinates, what we can do with them is sort of connect them up, thinking about it like almost like slope. We're going to go and sort of draw the 2 sides of the triangle that would make our problem here. Now, if A has the coordinate -1, -3 like we said, and B has the coordinate 3, 5 like we said, the distance from A to here, to this sort of corner here, is just asking the horizontal distance between -1 and 3. The distance from -1 to 3 is a distance of 4, and the vertical side here on this triangle looks like a -3 to a height of 5, or a distance of 8. When we just subtract our y values, we're getting the height of a triangle. When we subtract our x values, we're getting the base of a triangle. And then it just looks like our Pythagorean theorem. We square the 4's, we square the 8, we square the 4, we square the 8, we add our result, and we then square root our result to get our hypotenuse, which in this case would be the distance between A and B. Now, for our square root of 80, so far this week we've just been focusing on rewriting it as a decimal. We have done a little bit of practice. We did see it briefly rewriting it as a simplified radical. But to square root 80, I would expect you to just currently type it into your calculator. We get 8.94. We get this value of 8.94. Let's just find the distance between these 2 points using our formula here. We'll label these x1, y1, and x2, y2, and I'll plug these values into our formula right up here. We'll have 4 minus a -2. That quantity will be squared. And we'll have -1 I'm putting the negatives in parentheses to help me indicate that they're negatives and not confusing them with the minus signs that are already there. -1 minus 2 quantity squared. I'll subtract 4 minus -2, that's just 6 squared, and -1 minus 2 is a -3 squared. Watch out when you try this in your calculator. Some of your calculators, if you just type -3 squared, it might try and tell you -9. Some of your calculators might try and tell you -3 squared is 9. Make sure to put parentheses around that -3 before squaring it. Your calculator's misinterpreting what you're being asked, what you're asking it. We'll get 36 plus 81, 86 plus 9 as our answer here, which equals the square root of 45. 36 plus 9 is 45. And the square root of 45 is 6.7 for us, or 6.71. This is the sort of work I was expecting you would be doing. Turning the page over, we'll take a look at midpoint. Midpoint was what we covered in class today as well. The midpoint is just the average of two coordinates. It's averaging the x's, add two numbers and divide by 2. Add the two y's and divide by 2. Because you're doing it once for the x's and once for the y's, you should have a coordinate at the end. Your midpoint formula will be giving you a coordinate, a location. You need an x and a y at the end of your answer. We'll try this with number 11 here. We'll say we've got x1, y1, and x2, y2. And I'll create a large sort of just set of parentheses here for our coordinates. And I'll add up my x's. I'll go -2 plus 4 divided by 2. That'll be adding up my 2x values and dividing by 2. I have a comma because now I'm going to focus on the y values. It's the second coordinate. I'm going to be dealing with math from the second coordinate. I'll do 2 plus 1. 2 plus a -1 divided by 2. I'll add -2 and 4. I'll get 2 over 2. I'll add 2 plus a -1. I'll get 1 over 2. And I'll simplify those two answers. 2 over 2 is just 1. 1 over 2 is just 1/2. We'd have this as our most simplified answer, the coordinate that is halfway between -2, 2, and before -1. That is our midpoint and distance formulas.